Hey everybody, today we're talking about whether or not politics can be healthy. Can they ever be healthy? I don't know. We're going to talk about it. Tapestry weaves together the threads of our struggles, doubts, curiosities, faith, joys, and hopes to create meaningful conversations that matter. You know those late night conversations that go unexpectedly deep? That's what we hope to capture with the Tapestry Podcast. And we want everyone to join in the conversation. Because when we are heard and valued, we can begin to believe we're loved. Welcome to the Tapestry Podcast. All right, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Tapestry Podcast. Today we're talking about politics, whether politics can be healthy. I'm here with my friend Mikayla.
Hi.
And my friend Mwangi.
What's up?
And yeah, let's dive in. We're going to kind of divide this topic as we have been doing into 3 different episodes. And first, why is politics? Why are politics? Why is our political life the way it is? I guess is a good question to start with, because I don't know anybody who would say like, hey, things are just right. This is perfect. I'm really pleased with exactly how the political climate is in our country and in the world. I don't know. Well, maybe you guys would disagree. What do you think?
I would disagree. There are some people who feel like things are going very, very well.
Well, maybe, yeah, like currently.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. In their view.
Yeah. What do you think, Mikayla?
I don't think it's going well. Just from a personal standpoint, I think that things could be run a little bit differently. We'll say for now, just a little bit differently. Yeah,
well, I mean, but there's also kind of a difference. Maybe we should differentiate between like who's running the government right now and kind of the tone and tenor of political discussions in our country, right? Because like you might be happy with who's in power at any given point, whether that's this year or 2 years ago, but you might be really upset with kind of how we talk to each other or talk about each other. And maybe those are 2 different questions.
Yeah.
I do kind of think those are 2 different questions, mostly because I know that politics can be kind of a sore spot for a lot of people right now. I know that sometimes things can get really heated really fast, depending on what your opinions are about who's in power and who shouldn't be in power and how certain policies and stuff like that in the government are being handled. And I know that it's a really polarizing topic right now between individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wasn't speaking for myself necessarily early. I'm with you, Mikayla, but I know there's a segment of the population that feels things are going in the right direction, and certain steps that are being enacted are merging politics and religion. And for some of those folks, it's in their view of both things, religion and politics, and this mesh. For them, it's a welcome marriage to the point where they feel like, yeah, this is how it's supposed to be. This is exactly how it's supposed to be. Like, why do you think it's weird? You know, like, so, but, you know, we're here looking at the present time. But religion and politics historically have played and danced together in various ways, right? So, I think it doesn't take away from any feelings or, you know, again, being present in what's going on in the present, but historically, this dance has happened in various ways, right? And not just in Christianity, right? But it's happened in various ways.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about spirituality or religion in politics is that kind of depending on where you grew up or the people you grew up around, like you may have like very different ideas about how those ought to interact. And I remember moving from one part of the country to another. Those who've been listening or watching for a long time, I've talked about where I've lived. And I remember being surprised about how, like, in one place, it was assumed that if you were a person of faith, especially if you were a Christian, that you were part of one political party. But in another place with other people, it was assumed that if you were a Christian, a person of faith, that you were part of a different political party. And these are the two big ones in our country. And it was opposite in this case. I was like, whoa, I never, yeah. And this is true. There are people of deep, deep faith who really do want to do what they think is best according to their faith and their religion, who come to different conclusions on the political question, especially when it comes to political parties. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah.
Speaking for myself, I've only grown up in Colorado, so I only really know a lot of what Colorado's political landscape looks like. And so I wouldn't say I'm the most well versed on different places having different opinions on things. But I do know that if you are in Colorado and have a certain type of interest, essence, you could say, you tend to lean towards a certain political party, depending on what part of Colorado you grew up in, versus religion playing a factor, more so, I would say. But that's just my own, like, personal lived experiences. Like, where you are kind of affects that more than what religion does.
Yep.
But would you say that, like, in maybe the suburban areas you've been in or more urban areas you've been in, would you say that you find Christians who lean more liberal? So we've kind of gone from just religion to speaking specifically about Christianity, I understand. Whereas maybe in rural areas, you might find Christians who lean more conservative.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I also feel like most of that also will tie into like basic parts of their lifestyle. Things that they do could be slightly different from people who lean more liberal or more democratic in their own like political views and stuff who are still Christians. But it has a factor into it, but I think it plays more into like lifestyle, and lifestyle being how they chose, or at least from what I've seen, because I've seen both sides of that same coin in Colorado myself.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Mwangi?
No, I agree with you both. It's interesting you bring that up, Mike, about even in certain churches, like how affiliation happens with parties. And but we're having a discussion around politics, but politics is messy, right? So it's not very well defined. To me, it's nebulous, right? And the things of what politicians are interested in change all the time. So sometimes there's this catch up. And so the same thing, Mike, you're talking about, where maybe historically something was like this, at some point it may switch depending on what's going on, right? Yeah. So I think that's the hard part about saying whether these two things mesh, because even spirituality and religion itself can be a mess. Right? So when you take two messy things, sometimes depending on where you are, they may not be able to intersect very well. Or maybe they do for a period of time and then something changes. Maybe it's a new generation or some event happens that redefines that relationship. So, I mean, it's both personal. It is community, maybe it's a community thing, but it's tough to give one broad answer. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. And like what you said there, politics is messy, spirituality, religion, those are messy. And when you put them together, like, it doesn't get less messy. That's
not how the math adds up. It gets worse. Right?
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of a quote I just saw today that a friend posted, and it's from Billy Graham, who pretty well known, would not, I don't think, by anyone be considered like very progressive or liberal. And he apparently this is something that he said in 1981. Let me pull it up real quick here. It says, "I don't want to see religious bigotry in any form." Great. Like, I think we can all agree with that. And then he says, "It would disturb me if there was a wedding between the religious fundamentalists and the political right. The hard right has no interest in religion except to manipulate it." Billy Graham, Parade Magazine, 1981. I read that. I was like, oh, like, I have felt the same way, but I think it would be probably the same on any extreme, right? Like there's no interest in politics, in religion, or politicians are mostly interested in religion in order to manipulate it. That is the thing. And so if you think that you're marrying these two things, and Mwangi, like you said, some people are really happy with the way things are going now. Like, oh, this is great. Yeah, this is how it should be. Billy Graham disagreed, apparently. I disagree. I think it's dangerous. And those of us who lean toward the spiritual or lean toward being people of faith may think that that's the way to get power, but man, like there's some real dangers. And I think we've gone in blind on this, thinking that like, oh yeah, well this is now it's how it should be. Like, no, you're getting played is what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting played, but you don't know, right? You think, you think you're winning,
doing the playing,
right? You think you're winning. That could be the sad part. And let's be honest, we're talking about secularism. I mean, there's countries today that are founded on, that are sort of theocracies that use religious law as part of their, political landscape, right? They can use a book to justify or enact certain laws, right? Particularly, let's say around women, what women can or can't do. So that's another, those are recent examples, current examples of how religion and politics go together or don't go together, or they do go together, but they don't serve a certain class of people. So the lessons are there, right? I think the question we're at, and so I don't know if we've answered the question, Mike. I think, do these things go well together? Are they complementary? I don't know, man.
Well, I don't know if that has to be even a question for today, whether it's religion and politics, but just like politics and politics, can it be healthy at all? Like, couldn't we live in a world where we have differing points of view and kind of differing approaches to public life that is like healthier than it is now, regardless of spirituality or religion's involvement? And I mean, I think one thing that can help with that, or one of the problems I see, is that it seems like there's only one way to look at politics, or that is to say that if you're political, if you have a political viewpoint, that it is automatically assumed that it's partisan, that it is supporting a particular side or a particular candidate. And I don't think that has to be the case. But I think it's assumed now, right? Like, because politics intersects with so many of the important areas of life, like pretty much it feels like it touches on everything right now, that it's impossible to avoid. But I don't think that necessarily means that it means you have to support a certain party or candidate. And here in Colorado, that's actually kind of easy, at least in terms of registering to vote. Like, the majority of Coloradans are now unaffiliated voters. They're not affiliated with a party, which I think is kind of cool.
I mean, the definitions you're talking about, unfortunately, it's the politicians that make them up. So to your point on, like, if I make a statement, I'm allied with so-and-so, it's because the politicians say, in order for you to be allied, you know what I'm saying? Like, the problem is we're leaving it up to them to define this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not the best people to either hold their ground, or things like that, or, to reflect on decisions they made. I mean, politicians are not it. So we're at the mercy sometimes on how they define things. Even though we elect them, it seems like they're the ones influencing us in a much bigger way. So coming back to this, the messy, maybe the slimy part is that that's how things are defined. And then it puts us in these, either boxes that we don't belong in, or it makes us one dimensional. It's like, well, Mikayla likes vanilla ice cream, therefore I have from this one data point, I'm going to come up with these other 12 data points about who she is, which is not realistic, right? Or not true.
Yeah, man, that's like the the thing, we tend to pigeonhole each other, right? We tend to put each other in boxes, or even maybe ourselves. Like if I like this thing or stand against this other thing, I got to like get the package deal and like go all in. And I have found that that's actually pretty rarely the case when you talk to most people. Most people aren't really like all in on any of it, right? They like, even my friends who say are like really, really pro Second Amendment rights and gun ownership, may also really love renewable energy, right? And it's like, wait, but those don't go together. And it's like, well, why not? Like maybe you love guns because you love hunting, because you love the outdoors, and you actually are a conservationist, and you actually hate the idea of kind of an extraction economy. So sometimes, like in actual individual people, you don't get the package. You don't have a party line. Like people are people, and they're all different. Mikayla, how about your friends? Do you feel like your friends have kind of varying different opinions on things?
For the most part, no, but I think that's also from the school that we went to and some of the things that we've been taught in our lives. We grew up in similar areas within similar-ish situations, not exactly the same, but most of my friends have the same opinions and views. I do know my friends who are more outdoorsy, like to do things, like with gun ownership and stuff like that they would probably lean towards different opinions than I have in some of those topics, but I wouldn't say that on most topics we all really disagree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Mikayla. You go ahead.
Sorry. No, I do think, though, that people can be different on opinions, but for the political climate that we live in and how politics are centered in our lives, you have to be one or the other, and it all feels very black and white on opinions, when I'd say on a good amount of policies and other things in the government and in talk right now, I would say I'm kind of somewhere in like a gray area. I don't necessarily agree all the way with one side or all the way with the other. I see good benefits to both sides.
Yeah, I wanted to like, when does that dialogue happen, right? So does that actually happen enough where you have people with different viewpoints actually sit down and like, I don't think that happens as often as we think it does, right? It's if you go on social media, you might see somebody, people yelling at each other, but typical conversation of people sitting down and doing that, I actually think it's rare, right? Maybe especially outside of family, maybe family environment where you may have that, but it's not. At least that's my opinion, but I don't see that lot of that, because most of I see that disparity, and so usually it's like, in fact, the sad part is, they, you talk about they, but you've never met they, right? But you really have strong opinions about them, right? So maybe opening it up in that manner then can show that things aren't as black and white, because that just makes it superficial and easy, right? It's just a lot easier if you could just like, oh yeah, that is, and your brain's like, oh yeah, we got that, right? They're my friend or foe.
Yeah, we kind of want to put people in camps like that, right? Like, are you on the inside circle or the outside circle? And maybe it's because of like, I don't know, my personality or kind of the person I am, or like, I think I might attract people, but that sounds weird. Attract people who have questions or like want to have conversations. Like they just, like I end up in conversations with people in what feels like random places to me. And I've talked about this before as like the ski lift conversations. Like I ski a lot, and I'll end up just on a chairlift, and we had a conversation. And so like when you're thrown into those situations where it's, not a friend or a family member, kind of a stranger, right? Maybe you're doing something you both like, but that doesn't mean you have anything else in common necessarily. So I have actually found that I can have civil, thoughtful conversations with people I disagree with, like pretty easily, pretty much any time. And part of that's probably like my temperament, or maybe if not my temperament, kind of the commitments I've made as a human as I've grown and matured to like have those kinds of conversations, or be the kind of person who can have those conversations. So I think that part of the problem that we see in politics is that some would have us believe that we are so divided that we can't even talk to each other. And I have found that to be untrue. While I think it is true that we tend to surround ourselves with people who are like-minded, it's kind of normal and natural, because we like to be comfortable, and that's going to be the most comfortable thing. I have found that people I really baseline disagree with on things that I think are really, really important can actually have a conversation about these kinds of things without it devolving into a you're a bad and evil person. Because I think that's kind of have you guys seen that? If you disagree with somebody, they can either be dumb or crazy or evil. I feel like those are the options, right? Have you guys seen that?
Yeah. Speaking for myself on a college campus, you can see lots of different opinions and views like that daily in the middle of everything happening. And most of those conversations do tend to devolve into yelling and arguing with each other in a loud manner. But I think it's kind of the environment that they place themselves in. Because a lot of the people who want to come onto campus and give their opinions on things have opinions that they know do not align with what most of the campus agrees with. Mm-hmm. So it's so they set themselves up for that kind of scenario, I want to say, of them getting into those loud arguments and those kinds of things. But I also know people who I don't necessarily agree with on everything in terms of politics right now. We can sit down and have a normal conversation about it because it's not the only thing we have to share, and it's not the only thing we have to bond over in that moment. There's usually something else, whether or not it's work or an activity or I'm at an event or something. There is something else to be talked about outside of just our personal political opinions.
Well said. Yeah. Yeah, very well said. Because in a way, you've said it better than what we've said so far. Is politics is not within the world of politics. One thing doesn't define yourself, and then politics itself doesn't define your whole personality, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe what you're talking about, Mike. In fact, you might find this person in the ski lift with a different political, lean, but then there's all these other things you have in common that bring you together. And so sometimes we're looking for the things that contrast this. The things that contrast instead of things that can, allow for comparison. It's more like, well, what kind of music do you listen to? Oh, you listen to that? Well, that's our difference. When the reality, there may be a lot more things that we have in common. But we're using something as the wedge issue to just say you
wedges. Well, that's because wedges are politically beneficial, right? For a politician or a political party, it is beneficial to put a wedge between groups of people, which is awful. That's to me, that's bad. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with probably politics in general, but then specifically kind of our, I think one of you guys said we have polemics, right? Where it's it's so polarized, that you end up dehumanizing the other side, right? Or maybe even demonizing, right? In order to get the votes or the fundraising or whatever, you have to paint the other side as so bad and so evil that we have to stand up against them. And the problem is that really diminishes not only the other side's humanity, but the one who is doing the dehumanizing is also dehumanized, which I think is a deep spiritual truth. When we make others smaller, we're actually making ourselves smaller. And to me, that's just so dark and dangerous. And I don't know if that's a central problem in politics today, but for me, it's one of the big ones.
I mean, politics was founded. I mean, it's a way to govern, right? So how government systems are set up. It's the idea. Okay, how do we govern? How do we collect taxes? How do we build roads? How do we do all this stuff, right? So still, I'm serious. It's an attempt, right? It's an attempt. I think this is how we should do it. Let's set up these laws. Let's even see like whether people will follow the laws. Let's collect all these people's money. I'm sure they'll be happy once we spend it to do XYZ. Oh my God, they don't like what we did, or some people do and some people don't. Okay, let's split into these idealist camps, and we want this and we want this, and we haven't done. Yeah, it's not. We've been at this politics thing for thousands of years, and we still haven't gotten it right. So I'm not holding my breath. To your point, Mike, on like, is this gonna like, are we gonna converge? And like, I'm not holding my breath for that, because the problem is it's us trying to set up institutions or whatever, and holding them up in an ideal sense, when really like they're super broken and probably need calibration all the time. Right? Sometimes we realize, oh yeah, no, this was set up back in 17 something. Okay, does it need a refresh? I mean, if I had a house that was 300 years old, I'd repaint it at some point, right? Maybe the gutters are leaking. Gotta do something, right? So you got to keep going. You got to keep going with it, and so still, I'll keep saying that. Maybe to Mikayla's point, politics is it's just a bad thing for us to use to compare each other against. Right? Maybe that's the one rule we can all agree on. Like, let's not use politics to define people. Let's use something else. Right?
Ooh.
Like,
I like
we can
that.
all be,
That might be really
we
good.
could put it on a t-shirt, right? Like, that's our rule. Everybody, right? Like, that's not, you could talk about, I'm not saying don't talk about it, right? But don't use it to.
Don't let it define you.
Yeah. Don't let it define you, right? Let it go.
Ooh, that's good.
You know?
That might be a really good spot to kind of wrap up our thoughts in this episode. We've been kind of talking about what's the problem? Why is it the way it is? And next episodes, we'll talk about maybe some solutions, and then kind of the spiritual stakes, like what's at stake here for us, and whether or not politics can be healthy. So we hope you'll join us for the coming conversations as we talk more about this. This is good, guys. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about it. So, we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for coming along.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
The Tapestry Podcast is produced by Stephen Bailey. Original music was scored by Taylor Martin. Various friends host this podcast along with me, Mike Orr. Special thanks to Lauren Richmond Jr. and Resonate Media. You can learn more about Tapestry and join the conversation on our Discord channel at tapestrytalk.org. Thanks for joining us.